Andrew Anderson, Andy Anderson, principal here at Barrington Middle School.
Danielle Tealy, I'm a math teacher in 7th and 8th grade.
Jeff Blanchett, math teacher, 8th grade.
Rebecca Henderson, STEAM studio, grade 6 through 8.
I'm not late. Sean Henderson, 8th grade science teacher. Yeah.
They just happen to share the same last name. It happens. So
yeah, so I just wanted to toss out to you, maybe you could share a little bit about what you've done so far this year in terms of deeper learning in your classrooms, whether there's an interesting project that you all worked on, or just some different structures you've been building, because we got a chance to visit 5 different classrooms, 3 different groups of people, and so it'd be great to hear how you guys think about deeper learning in your classroom. I'll toss to Sean.
Sure.
Since you were last one in, you got to go
Last
first.
one in, first we go. All right. So this year we teach 8th grade physics and basic speed, distance, time. So we took a concept that's pretty simple, and we went out in front of the school, and we actually had the kids track using a specified distance. We had them track how fast the cars were going using just a speed, distance, time formula. And through that, we found some surprising numbers. We did it with all four of my classes, and then actually the entire 8th grade did that. And we found out some surprising numbers that a lot of cars were speeding right in front of the school. Like 25, we had some that were going like 25 miles an hour above the speed limit, which is crazy to think about. So we saw that as a problem, and the kids were astounded. And they each took 20 cars, basically going 10 each direction, spread out throughout the day. And then, so as an extension of that, for homework, I had them go home and do this at a location near their house. So then they each had another 20 data sets. So now we're talking a lot of data spread out across all of Barrington. And actually, I have a map. They came in and we plotted basically where all the points were across the town. So I had like probably 2,000 data points from which to use. And we did that. All the 8th grades did that. So we had a huge document just of data for the students to go through. And we found similar results, that there were a lot of speeding problems in Barrington. So we decided to kind of take it the next step further and say, okay, well, what can we do about it? So I partnered up with the LA teacher on my team, and we started to craft a letter. So we decided to address the letters to the police chief. We sent some to the Barrington Times, the school committee, town administrators, people of importance in the town. And we ended up getting back a response, and they actually published an article in the Barrington Times about the kids project. We got a response from the police chief saying thank you very much for the data. We're going to send some officers there. So it was a nice collaboration between the LA and the science department. And then we took another step further, and Danielle, you can, the math. Were you talking about this project, or were you talking about
I was talking about this project.
Okay. Sorry.
But no, so we, kind of from a math perspective, we kind of honed in on the data that was collected by students in science, and we graphed it. So we looked for trends in data in different locations and similar locations throughout the town to be able to compare, and also to kind of be able to come up with ideas of why there might be certain trends in the data. A lot of kids said, well, I live in this in this area, and there's oftentimes a cop kind of located in that spot, and people in the town know it, so there maybe wasn't as much speeding over there because of these kind of known tendencies, and kind of trying to make connections of why these things are happening and what kind of results we're getting for what reasons.
And then through our history teacher, they looked at how could you affect change in laws? How could we, if you notice a problem in a specific spot, what could we do, legally to try to change the law, and what would that process be? So it was a true interdisciplinary, unit across all 4 contents, from such a simple thing as, speed, distance, time data. And what's really cool is I can go back next year. It's a repeatable project. I can go back next year, and then we can even look at the data again. Did it change from last year to this year? You know, and there's a lot of possibilities you can do with that.
And
Just
what
a-
the students and the teacher don't know is that there are going to be digital signs being placed up for speeding around the town, partly because of their efforts.
Yeah,
So that will.
they already put up a few.
Yeah.
I noticed.
Yeah, you know this one.
But what also is kind of behind the scenes commentary is that our community, we have 833 students, and then on a given sunny, warm day, there's well over 300 bikes that come to our school, that ride their bikes to school. At one time, it was all over 400 bikes. So it really just resonates with our students that it's their streets as well, which I think that was pretty powerful. Yeah.
All right, so the projects that take place in my room start out with the material and the 21st century tools that we have available to our students. So it's done through coding, robots, or using other smaller hands-on technology devices to learning how to record their information through iPads and uploading that information, and also being cognizant of tracking the project that they're working on from beginning to end through what's called an inventory that we use in my classroom. So once they master the different specific tools that we have in the room, the 21st century skills, and they practice the process of learning, how to fail, what to do with that, what it looks like, how to share and work with others, which is a beast within itself. Once we practice that, then we start to reach out and envelope in some other content and material from other classroom teachers. So for example, this year, towards the end of one of the trimesters, I started working with the woodshop teacher next door, and the kids made maglev cars in his class. We popped them on a maglev track in mine. And the students, what I failed to introduce to you is the students formed design teams. So you had someone who was specific in the design of a car, and then someone in my room who was specific in designing a gear ratio system, and then printing out a 3D propeller that would power that would push the maglev car down the track. So the students had to come together with this real-world design team type solution and formulate their results. And we had a final share-out day for that. There's a lot of other basic examples in that nature that I can speak of. I don't know how many more you want me to discuss, but some of them, last year we had a robot wedding. The students in my 6th grade class, Wally and Eve got married. They invited, the community members to come in, the parents, school committee, other teachers. They planned it out from the beginning to the end, right from having a lawsuit in the middle of it where the boys sued the girls because they didn't like the outfits they were sewing. So there was a lot of pieces that were connected, and not just the coding and the programming in the building, but a lot of the 4 C's that you might have seen as you walked around: the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. This year we had a mission to Mars, where the students designed a rover and they completed missions on a Mars Lego table, and we collaborated with another coding teacher in the building, and the students came together, and again they made design teams. They had to work together. They used the technology tools that they had available in his classroom and incorporated them with the Lego material that we had available in mine as well. So at any point in time where we're able to make a connection to other content and curriculum that's going on in the building, especially if the kids see it, I try to bring it right in, and I try to let them move forward with those projects when the space and time is available within the curriculum. There's a lot more examples. I just don't know how many more you want to hear about.
That's great. We'll go to each person, and maybe we'll get questions and leave time for questions.
I'll tell you, so in 8th grade math, so I teach 2 levels of classes. I teach Algebra 1 and I teach grade 8 math. But in both, there's a decent level of overlap in some of the topics, in particular linear functions and analyzing scatter plots and putting kind of a linear regression to it. So one of the things that we do, and I started this last year, is we take, it's called the rising cost of college, where I give students the opportunity to look at 4 colleges of their choosing, and I give them sort of criteria, so they're picking like an Ivy League, a public school, a community college, et cetera. And they take the tuition prices from the last 15 years from each university. And what they do with that data is, in essence, they put together scatter plots, and they're analyzing to see if there's particular trends in the data, how strong the trends are, and then they put all of that together in the end and kind of describe, like, here's the differences between the 4 types of colleges I looked at, which ones seem to have a really, really strong correlation between, you know, the year and the increase in the college prices. And what's remarkable, at least, maybe it's not so surprising to me, but to the students, is how steady the increase is, and how when we talk about correlation coefficient in Algebra 1, and you're looking for something close to 1.0, which would be a perfect linear association, most of the colleges are like 0.99. So every single year they're going up by almost the exact same linear rate, which is phenomenal. And if you look at like the rise with inflation, it's way beyond that. So it's an interesting, for a few reasons. One, it ties everything in together nicely. They're able to take the data, they're able to come up with the equations. I have them make predictions for what it would cost them to attend 4 years or 2 years, depending on the school at the university. So they have to calculate this year, 2023 to 2026, what would it cost them if these trends were to continue, how confident they are with those predictions, which sadly with a lot of the cases, because it's almost a perfect linear association, they're very confident that unfortunately those costs are going to be very consistent in the future. So it's a very interesting, it's eye-opening I think for some of them to look at it, and the differences between certainly taking private schools versus community colleges. Students know one is a lot more expensive than the other, but I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think they have sort of the understanding of how hugely different it is, and how if you look at the patterns with it, there's also a difference between those private schools and community colleges with how they're changing. Usually if you found a school that's not quite as consistent, it tended to be a community college, which sometimes tries to hold costs steady, whereas private schools, that was almost non-existent if you look at the data over the time. So it's interesting in that it ties everything in really nicely. I'm able to go, like, have the students really look at what, I guess sadly, it might cost them in the future when they're going there, but just analyzing, like, here's the difference between the schools, make sort of an analysis at the end, like, what type of school do you think at this point in time better fits your needs moving forward? Not just looking at cost, because you could easily say, well, that one's way more expensive than the other, but like kind of weighing in everything else at the same time. So there's a lot of, I think, really powerful stuff in that, but also there's a ton of the math that I do on a daily basis in both classes that really ties in quite nicely.
And I think it allows an element of choice within structures, right? So you're giving them criteria, but you're saying pick any college that fits these criteria that you might want to go to. And also they can then think about potentially handing this data off to the high school, and they could do something with it to think about, like, great, so if I go to this college, what's the likelihood I'll get a job afterwards? Or what's the likelihood that that job will be high paying and I can pay back my loans if I have. So there's like all these places where it can get extended in the grades as they go up and up and up as we hand that data off.
In an interesting extension to that, in another cluster that they're doing a very similar project, but the ELA teachers working with the students about the Common App and how to complete the Common App and what that writing process is like. So they kind of dovetail those two together, which is a pretty cool thing for 8th graders to be thinking about beyond high school.
The project that I'm bringing up is kind of my cluster's take on Genius Hour. So we're the Blue Cluster, so we call it Blueprint. But we are a loop, so we started kind of implementing this on our cluster last year, and we've kind of had different phases because as a group, the 4 of us on the team hadn't really had a ton of experience with it, and we were really honest with the kids and telling them that. So we went through with the first stage, and we really just wanted to ask the kids to choose something that they were interested in learning about, something they were interested in pursuing, something they were interested in learning how to do. And so at that point, we asked them to work individually to really kind of hone in and focus on something that they, as an individual, were interested in learning. And they have a certain amount of time kind of each day devoted to working on their project. So each student had to submit kind of like a form for approval, basically, to let us know kind of what their project idea was. And we kind of conferenced with some of them who were kind of struggling to come up with something. And then time was devoted each day so that they could work on their project. They were learning to crochet, they were interested in learning another language, they were interested in learning how to play an instrument. So there was a really wide range of things that were chosen. And at the end of the time, students knew in advance that they were going to be asked to do a presentation. So they kind of explained like their process and how they chose what they wanted and the steps that they kind of took to learn whatever it was that they happened to choose. And then a lot of them would kind of give us a demonstration of what they learned or show us their calligraphy or their paintings. And then we've kind of done this, we've tried to do it each trimester. So the second phase was that they were allowed to work in groups. Because a lot of them kind of gave us feedback that they were interested in collaborating, maybe kind of combining their skills with other people on their team. So groups kind of got bigger and they became, they kind of gave us feedback that they were able to choose different types of projects because they could work with other people. So a couple of people chose to do like almost like a cooking kind of show. So they would kind of plan their menu and make their grocery list, and then they would get the items and they would cook for their parents on the weekend, and then come back and like give feedback and get feedback from people who they cooked for. A couple of kids chose to do almost like an internship where they kind of reached out to a local business or a family member, and they would kind of go in on Saturdays and get some experience in that, and almost kind of like journal what their experiences were like. So a big component of the project for us is that there has to be a component of it that we're asking them to be able to do in class, in school. So that is kind of probably the biggest challenge that we've had, in that some of the projects that kids are that are interested in doing sometimes pose some constraints. So that's what we end up kind of collaborating with them to try to figure out how to make their ideas work. We tried a little bit of a different type of project this past trimester because we really wanted to encourage our students to do more reading. So we took a little bit of a break from what we kind of designate as blueprint, and we did kind of like a book project. So it's still kind of along the same lines in that we wanted them to really have a lot of choice, so they could choose whatever book they wanted, whatever genre, whatever topic they were interested. And the four of us, we all did it as well. So we all picked a book, and we really kind of devoted the time to reading our book, and we all completed book logs. And then we all did presentations on our books. So now as a cluster, we kind of have this list of books that we either recommend, or maybe not so much for different reasons. But it's a really awesome opportunity for us, I think, to really engage with them and to really encourage our students to pursue something that they're interested in that maybe doesn't seem to initially kind of fit into their everyday like academic lifestyle. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting for us to kind of be motivated to try to pick something, even as adults, that we might be interested in at this point and are pursuing something new.
Awesome. So maybe we'll go with everybody. Take 1 minute. Turn and talk with a partner next to you about one thing that struck you about what folks shared, and one question you have for them, and then we'll toss out questions to the panel. So quick turn and talk, someone next to you, what struck you, what question do you have?
Hello. Hey, let's go. Hey, Jen Rollins, nice to meet you. So, what do we have in constructing and drive music?
And we're back together. Would anyone like to toss a question out to the teachers? We have them for about 10 minutes now. Not everyone will get to ask that question, but any questions that jump to mind?
It seems it's really cool, like how fluid it is with the department collaboration and flex scheduling and things like that. So I'm just wondering what kind of processes or what kind of structures are supporting that level of autonomy and flexibility and ability to collaborate.
So I can talk about just the schedule itself, and then you guys can talk about what happens within your schedule. So we are on a 6-day rotating schedule. When all of our 6th grade teachers, our 6th grade students are off team, we consider that their allied art team. So we have core team and we have our allied arts. So when all those students are off team, then they're in classes such as Becky's class as well, and all 284 6th graders are off at the same exact time. So the teachers are engaging in common playing time. They have a prep and a duty each day. Their common playing time is their designated time that they're meeting. Every other day they meet with their grade level team, content team. So they'll meet with all the math teachers will meet together, the grade level, and then opposite of that, they're with the clusters. So they're meeting every single day in common planning time. And then we also have a kind of a modified block schedule, where on days 1 and 2 are blocked. Days 3, the teachers see all students and the students see all teachers. Days 4 and 5 is blocked. Day 6, all teachers see students, students see all teachers. And then within that schedule, the cluster teachers have something called the FAST period, which is flexible academic support time, and that's just it. It's flexible, and it's there to provide interventions. It's there to enrich. It's there to ramp up. It's there to do some of these flexible projects, such as the blueprint project that Danielle talked about. So, if you guys want to talk about
During that flex time, do the students choose where they go, or they're with their?
you guys can talk about that.
The way we structured our blueprint project is really completed during that fast time of the day. So on my cluster, we each have one day where we have kind of access to our students. So if students are absent or if they need extra support, then I typically see them on a Thursday. So on that Thursday, all other students who didn't need to see me for anything would be working on their blueprint project in one of my colleagues' classrooms. So we set up our students so that they're in kind of rotating groups so that they know, depending on what day it is, where they need to go, unless they are assigned to a particular teacher's room for ramp up or extra help.
So how many people here have more of a traditional schedule or in a high school where it's more compartmentalized by department? Yeah, all right, so I think it's important to note that we are able to still accomplish these things at the middle school level, because what we've really done is next year they're starting a new schedule, but the common planning time, we've increased common planning time across the district for all teachers, with the idea that more common planning time means that students are doing better. If we're looking at the OECD data on how high-performing countries are doing. So it was really critical to do that. We have coaching from Mike at the high school as well as we have it here, and he works with teams of teachers to create their projects. Not all of them are interdisciplinary in the sense that teachers are collaborating, but they're interdisciplinary in the sense that the projects themselves are interdisciplinary. And a third way that we've addressed it is through the addition of pathways. So students can identify or choose a pathway that we've created so they can go deep into a particular area. We've had a lot of conversations here at the high school about getting away from the idea of coverage. That is something, whenever we hear that, we stop, we ask, who are the curriculum police? Because essentially it would be me, and I am not in anyone's classroom asking what day they're on or what page in a textbook. So we have conversations about why do we think that coverage is where we need to be. So we are engaging in a lot of difficult conversations as we're moving through this. Here, there was some nervousness about if we do this, then our test scores are going to go down. And that was across the district. We actually saw the opposite happen. As we've done this, our test scores have actually increased. I came to the high school, to the middle school, and I wrote a fake permission slip saying, I give you permission and I will stand out in public saying that we moved away from coverage to depth. And if there is an impact on test scores, I will support where we are if there's an implementation dip. But we've actually seen the exact opposite happen, which is what's showing up in the research and the literature, is that when kids can go deep and then they can apply their learning and transfer their learning, they actually do better on standardized assessments anyway.
And I would call out specifically, one of the teachers we visited, the science teacher, everybody visited, Peter, was the teacher who said, like, I would really love to do this stuff, but I need to know that I'm not going to get my wrist slapped when this doesn't go well, or like when things happen. Like, I need to know that that's okay. And he's someone who's been teaching and is an excellent teacher, like all the folks up here. He's been teaching for 25 years and has done some of this stuff before, but was then told for a while, don't do that anymore. We need to move to a different kind of teaching, and now we're coming back to that again. So the alignment of having a district leader who's willing to support that, a school leader who's willing to support that, and teachers who are willing to try all those things is a really important alignment. Otherwise, teachers are going to get dinged for trying things that might be seen as innovative when the evaluation system comes around.
And it does take a little bit longer in those traditional schedules, but it's very possible, and now we've given the schedules to the teachers to give us input. We've changed the schedules, we're adding a block for every teacher at the high school once a week. And added CPT time across the district.
Let's get at least one more question, maybe two, depending on how long the question is. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about a comment made about practicing the process of learning
Yes.
and how that's foundational. So practically, how does that look like at the beginning of the year, throughout the year? Is it part of the growth mindset posters that I see around?
Yeah, so the way that I focus it in my classroom, it's called the Evans Diary. So the students practice the process of identifying what it is that they're trying to do. Because a lot of times students will pick up a project or an assignment and they're not even sure what their focus is, right? So they do that first, and then so it's called define the problem. Then they have to understand what their resources are. So they might have to do a little research. What do I have available to me? How am I gonna move forward with this? What tools do I have? People, research papers, what's in the library? How can I really get started with a good foot under myself? And then they make a sketch and label it. So they can say, all right, well, here's what I do have, and here's how I'm gonna put it all together. So when they start building or coding or constructing, or whatever it is that they're creating, now they have a sketch to go from. And what this also does is prove to them that documenting and tracking their work is never going to go away. For the rest of their life, I tell them, you're always going to have to prove yourself, whether you were right or wrong. You're always going to come back to this data. And again, it can be applied to any other content, right? In a different form, they use that, right? And then once they do that, the meat of that evidence diary is in their SWOT section, their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The hardest part of that section for my kids is for them to openly admit what is going wrong. Once a kid can get past saying, this fell apart and I don't know why, and have a discussion about it, that's when the learning happens. That's when they start to really reach out and grow and go deeper into their learning and apply past projects or new objects or different things that they've learned about into their project, right? And so they track that data in a lot of different ways. I let them decide what works best with their learning. So some of the kids take time-lapse videos and they write about it. Some kids take screenshots of their code. Other kids write paragraphs and paragraphs of information. As long as it's something that's, that can be conveyed and read by someone else who's a visitor to the classroom, which some of you saw today, then they're doing their job. And then finally they reflect on it. So did they solve their problem or not? And again, they say, well, how come you put this or not piece in here? They don't understand why they have that option to recognize if they didn't solve it fully. And being able to reflect on that, this is what I did, this is how I solved the problem, these are the resources I used, it worked great. Or the other side of it, I still didn't find a solution, but these are all the things I've done up until this point. It allows them to see their growth, which again is super important to go back to that other piece of grit, which you might have seen as you walked around the building today as well.
So we also embrace John Hattie's visible learning strategies, and our school has made a commitment to I can statements to students tracking their data, and then students engage in the reflective process. So in all teachers, in all classrooms, in all students, they do some type of version of that reflective process. So the design thinking practice is what Becky, and you may have seen some of the plan, do, study, act process could be another one. In math, they do a predictive score, an actual score, and then reflect. So really getting kids to be.
It's great that we're committed to those pieces, so even our kindergartners are engaging in what are our mistakes, how do we reflect from them, how do we learn from them, how do we improve. In fact, I'm going to do a visible learning tour at 1:15 right after this in grades K-3. So you'll see it every level, developmentally different of course, but every level is doing the same process.
So I want to honor our teachers' time, because I know that it's probably about the time for you all to be able to leave. Are there any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share that you feel like we would be remiss if we didn't get to hear?
I think just try it. If you're thinking about it, talk to the kids, the students that you're going to be working with, and have a conversation with them, and just try your projects. It's pleasantly surprising sometimes how the learning moves forward when you include them in the conversation. And that's when I think some of these projects really blossom.
I think so, we took a concept as simple as speed, distance over time, and turned it into a very deeper learning project that was very beneficial for the kids. So,
Well, I guess I could add too, you never actually know
Math words.
truly what you're gonna end up finding, and I think I started this project last year, and this year, like, there's a few tweaks I made, and now even moving forward, like, there's so many options. When we get to exponential functions, we were talking about the possibility of, like, not that it's happy, but looking at, you know, paying back loans and stuff over a period of time. So there's a lot of different things you can do with it. I mean, obviously, time is always a little bit of a restraint, but there's so much that you don't even think about when you start it that literally might not even come to fruition the first year, but then maybe the next, you know, it keeps moving forward.
And I think just no one sitting in this room is starting at zero. Like you are all doing project-based experiences and things already, and you don't really realize it. I feel like I've had conversations, so many conversations with Andy and Paula that I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. And like, I mean, they tell me all the time, like, you're already doing these things, you just don't really recognize it. And so that definitely makes it seem something that is more approachable when you kind of realize that you're already kind of there, you've already kind of started. It's just kind of now figuring out like what's that next small step you can take to kind of continue this process.
Thank you so much.